Hi, everyone. I'm John German, Berkeley Lab's Chief Communications Officer, and I'm here today to talk with Berkeley Lab Director Mike Witherell and Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer Lady Idos. Mike, during our April 21st town hall, you announced some new core values for the lab: innovation, service, team science, trust, and respect. And you explained how these new values are an extension of stewardship, which is a set of ideas and principles you developed in 2018 to describe our responsibilities as lab citizens and leaders to care for the lab's people, research, and resources. Why was it important to introduce the new core values at this time?
Well, when I came here 5 years ago, I didn't bring with me a set of core values that I had in mind to impose on this lab community. We've been trying to learn from the lab community about what are the best parts of our culture and what we want to shape our stewardship values around. And we want our stewardship values to reflect that highest ground. The pandemic, of course, is a key moment in this lab's long history, and we've all learned a great deal from it. We think through these lessons carefully, we have an opportunity to not just return to the lab we left, but to build it back stronger and better.
Okay, Lady.
Thanks, John. Really happy to be here today. So as many of us know, we're celebrating our 90th anniversary, and this campaign is leading us to think more deeply about building the lab of the future. And what that means is also thinking about the workforce of the future and how to proactively build a culture that will create the environment we need, both virtual and in person, to meet the critical scientific challenges we're facing right now. In addition, as we've seen, we are in a period of social and political division in our country, and what I think is a historic reckoning with issues around racial equity. So this is a really good opportunity for us to focus and reflect on what we stand for here at the lab. The new values also complement the concepts of IDEA for inclusion, diversity, equity, and accountability.
Thanks. So one question we had was, is this something someone told us to do? Is this a mandatory requirement, these new core values?
No, the Department of Energy didn't give us a directive to do this. It was our own idea. During my career as a research leader, I tried to model the work environment I thought would be comfortable and productive, but you can't do that in a large organization. You need a more thoughtful approach, one with clearly articulated values. So it's not mandatory training. It's not a rules we have to learn. It's a voluntary commitment of how we do our work and the hope that people will want to align with those values and that we take care of each other in this way.
Can you tell us how the 5 values were developed and how long that took? What was the process?
Thanks, John. Yeah, so as Mike mentioned, he shared his vision of stewardship with the lab community back in 2018. And he talked about, as lab leaders and employees, we're charged to serve as responsible stewards of people, research, and resources. So the following year, the IDEA Senior Leadership Council, or SLC, discussed the need to align the organizational values with Mike's vision of stewardship. There were also several different types of values at the lab at the division level, but we didn't have a cohesive set of values for the lab community that reflected stewardship. At the same time, we were getting feedback from employee surveys, employee resource groups, and others about the need to continue to promote respectful treatment of others and the need to come together with a common understanding of expectations and behaviors. So over the next year, SLC helped develop the set of values, shared them with stakeholders, and worked on a visual language and a plan for a multi-year campaign. What we hope to do is have these values be used as tools for us to advance stewardship. The thinking is that when we improve upon how we demonstrate the values, we can become better stewards of the lab. And as mentioned, with new normal, future of work, hybrid workforce, this will all require us to strengthen our cultural relationships and truly define what it means to be a lab citizen.
So it sounds like having values is not a new thing. There have been values at the division level, and the laboratory certainly has had values. Did the laboratory normal values before, and what was wrong with those old values that these values replace?
Well, as Lady mentioned, we've had values and principles of the laboratory before, but in the last few years, we've established the IDEA program at the laboratory. We've brought up the idea of stewardship responsibilities. And we thought it was a good time to actually take a look at values in that perspective and how to align with what we've already been talking about.
Great, thank you. So there's this concept of stewardship. What is stewardship, Mike, and what is the relationship between stewardship and these core values?
Well, as I think about it, Stewardship is the responsibility to make sure that we treat this laboratory in a way that ensures it remains a valuable national asset in the long future. And when thinking about how to do that, I think our stewardship responsibilities extend to the lab's research, people, and resources. And we believe that articulating our core values will help serve all those responsibilities.
Lady, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, thanks, John. The way that I'm thinking about this too is that each day, every person at the lab contributes to the scientific mission, whatever they do here at the lab. We each have a role in serving as a responsible steward of the lab. That's the responsibility part, and that's what we do. The behavior part, on the other hand, and how we do things is where the values come in. The values are the commitment or pledge we make to the lab and to each other. And so they should help inform and guide how we do our work, our day-to-day actions and behaviors as stewards and citizens. They describe what we stand for, but also how we approach our work and how we interact with each other.
Something that's become fundamental to the lab's culture in the last few years are the principles of inclusion, diversity, equity, and accountability, what we call IDEA. How does IDEA, the principles of IDEA, fit into the core values?
Yes, so when we start from the 3 pillars of stewardship, so research, people, resources, IDEA falls under people stewardship. And this is in our efforts to create an inclusive work environment, improve diverse representation, remove barriers to career opportunities, and strengthen awareness and accountability. So that's how IDEA fits in.
Great, thank you, Lady. So safety is obviously something that's very important to the laboratory, has been for a long time. And it's central to how we take care of each other. Why isn't safety one of the core values? And were there any other core values that were not included in the set?
Well, let me talk about safety. As you said it right, it is central to stewardship, taking care of people, research, and resources. And as people have heard me say so many times through the pandemic, the health and safety of the people who work at the laboratory is my greatest responsibility and our greatest responsibility. Safety is also embedded in the values, such as respect, how we take care of each other, and trust, which we should be earning every day through our behavior. The reason we give safety such a high priority is because of our values. But to perform difficult work safely requires more than just values. It takes knowledge and training and planning and focus on execution. So it only goes part of the way towards a safe working environment.
Thanks, Mike. Lady?
Yeah, thanks, John. And I agree with Mike as well. And as we think about, how we developed these values over the last year, there was a lot of discussion about which were the most important. And what we ended up with is actually a broad set of values that encompass what we've been hearing from the lab community and what people say they care about. So for example, if we look at the previous core values from the past, there were values like safety, sense of urgency, integrity, and ethics. And we see that sense of urgency actually rolls up to our values of service and innovation. And other ones like we respond to the call, integrity, ethics, those roll up to our values of trust and respect. So in a lot of ways, these 5 values are not actually new. They're concepts that we've been hearing throughout the lab, what people have heard us say, or what we've heard people say when they talk about what it's like to work here at the lab. And they reflect who we already are as lab citizens and something to aspire to every day.
Thank you. So it's one thing to talk about values, but how do we make them real? How do we make them part of the lab's culture and its processes?
So this campaign has a multi-year plan and has several phases to allow for the introduction of the values to the lab community, but also to gradually embed them in our key employee and lab interfaces. So for example, we have talent processes like onboarding, performance management, and so on. So we're in the first phase right now, and we're focusing on awareness and hearing back from the community through surveys and a series of conversations. These are meant to give us a sense of how the community thinks about these values and to learn from them so that we can bring them to life as we conduct the day-to-day research and business of the lab. So for example, we want to know, what are the behaviors associated with each value? We'd like to ask everyone to join the conversations that are taking place right now, to fill out the survey. We want to make sure that these values are empowering each of us to make a positive change in our culture. So eventually, we want to see employees be able to see the values everywhere. We want people to refer to them in conversations and to help us guide our culture. and eventually integrate them and operationalize them in the ways that we approach talent, research, and business.
Thank you. I should add here that one great way to think about the core values and incorporate them into our jobs that people may not be aware of is our new recognition platform that we call Bucket List. You can read about that in Elements, but basically it asks you to recognize your peers for great work and their support of the lab's mission. And Bucket List requires you to assign a core value to each of these recognitions. So it's a great way to incorporate that into our day-to-day behaviors. Next question, how is the lab going to mandate living the core values? Is there going to be some kind of enforcement mechanism?
Well, core values can't be propagated through mandates. So that's certainly not what we're going to do. And we're not going to have core value police is not going to work here. What we really want is for everybody to make sure their own behavior is aligned with these values. The goal is that all of us behave in a way that we would like others to behave toward us. I also want to take a minute to talk about team science. That's sort of our longest standing core value at this laboratory, in a sense. As you know, E.O. Lawrence first pioneered the concept here, and he realized that science could be done better and faster with a diverse team of engineers, operations specialists, researchers coming together to do big things together. That's our legacy. And I want to emphasize that that team in team science is not just researchers. It's everybody here at the lab. It's electricians and custodians and finance people, plumbers, architects, health services, security. We're all here to advance our scientific mission. And I think no laboratory have people as committed to the mission as we do here at Berkeley Lab.
Thanks, Mike. So, Lady, what should we do when someone isn't demonstrating a core value?
As folks remember, when we rolled out IDEA, what we said is this is an opportunity to build awareness. Not everyone's going to get things right the first time. They might say the wrong thing, they'll make a mistake. And like we've been saying for psychological safety, we want to create an environment where people feel safe to admit or make mistakes, feel supported by their colleagues to learn and grow. And of course, there are behaviors that are egregious, so discrimination, harassment, retaliation, bullying, and so on. And they create an unsafe environment. So there are ways to report these actions, of course. But generally, for those of us on a learning journey, we can be proactive by taking the time to be an upstander, to respectfully intervene in the moment, educate others, and serving as an ally. My colleague Janie likes to say that most people are 10 minutes from understanding. So extending patience and grace to others who are trying to learn is a really important part of building community. And so we're all aspiring to do better, and we hope our values can guide us.
Thanks, Lady. So over the last year or so, we've been separated, and during the pandemic, and many of us are working remotely, many people working on site. How can we use the core values when we're not together as a laboratory?
Whether you're in person or working remotely, we can all participate in the 3 pillars of stewardship. And so we either conduct or support research in what we do for the lab. We have responsibilities for resources and being custodians of property or equipment or even sustainability and so on. And we collaborate and partner with people. And some of us are people leaders too. So each person can demonstrate the values and the ways that they approach their day-to-day job. And this is how collectively we can actively build the culture for the next 90 years.
I think about our safety culture, and if we behave this way at home, we're safer there too. And I think that applies to these core values too. I think we'd be better at home if we try to align our behavior with our core values.
So ideally, how will having these new core values for the laboratory, how will they change the lab? How will the lab be different? And how will it change the way people do their day-to-day work?
Yeah, I'm not looking for an overhaul in how we do our work here. I don't think that's the goal. I'm hoping we can strengthen the best parts of our behavior, those parts that are driven by trust and respect and service, team science and innovation. And I would like us to think twice before we react to people dismissively or angrily. Everyone knows sometime in their life what it was like to be treated with disrespect, to not be listened to. So everyone should think about that and not try to be the person who inflicts that on other people. everyone working at the lab deserves to come to work in a supportive environment with productive and committed colleagues. That would be the best outcome.
Great. Thank you both for answering these very good questions from the lab community. I want to thank you for your thoughts and your time. And if you have questions about the lab's core values, you can visit stewardship.lbl.gov, or you can email stewardship@lbl.gov with questions, and someone will answer them. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been a really interesting conversation. Thanks to Mike and Lady. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.